Hello and welcome back to another episode of the Mystic in Training podcast with your host, me, Melissa Amos. It is so good to be back. How have we been doing since the last episode where we were speaking about noise and signal and recognizing that difference between the voice of your intuition and the voice of your conditioning, your fear, your programming, like all that noise that sits underneath it. For me, that understanding and that simple flip, knowing that my intuition isn't just my inner world, my intuition isn't just the voices that are going on in my head, but it comprises of a lot of different, if you like, parts of me. And that each of those parts, those aspects, has a different intuition, the inner teacher, that some of those parts of me were there to keep me safe, were there put on as strategies for whatever reason that I needed at the time. And whilst they all held a reason, they all had a purpose for being there, like the truth was that they weren't always helpful in the moment. And if you took on board what we were speaking about last week, perhaps you realize quite how powerful the knowing of that is. And as always, there's another layer that sits with this. There's a deeper understanding that unfortunately can be the thing that gets in the way. And I say this because this is entirely what happened to me when I started to know these inner voices. And I see it with my clients over and over again. Even though we begin to develop this skill, if you like, of recognizing when something feels like it's loud, like it's urgent, like it's overwhelming, like it needs it for now. And then that other voice that many of us call our intuition, but we might know as our higher wisdom or our higher guidance, that kind of still place, that observer place that sits in the middle of that, this quieter aspect, this truer aspect, and how that begins to feel. Well, the real challenge then starts to happen, because I think for a lot of us, the challenge isn't hearing the signal. I think that many of us begin to notice the subtleties, if you like, between the different voices or feelings or how we're receiving it. Is two things. It's one, making the space for it and asking those questions, which is a skill you can develop. But the second part is trusting it, because the moment that that signal comes in and comes on board, that you have that idea, that knowing, that pull towards something, the noise, the rest of it gets louder, right? If you're about to start a move towards the direction of your dreams, so that might be reaching out to the person that you really want to build a relationship with. It might be releasing a program. It might be reaching out to that author or that actor or that celebrity that you really want to have on your podcast, right? That the moment you have that pull, then what happens? Our fear kicks in, our doubt appears, our logic then starts to try and make sense of it. And then that signal that felt so clear and right in the moment becomes confusing. We start to wonder, was this really right for me in the first place? Is this now intuition coming on board? Is this a feeling telling me no, that's not right? And so the question really that I want to explore today in the podcast is, how do we make decisions from our signal, especially when fear can feel so convincing? Because really, I don't think that the real problem is people struggling with intuition. Most of the time, we know the right thing to do. I think that we struggle more with trusting ourselves. And it's that moment, that space between that knowing and that acting, where it can be make or break. So I suppose for now, we can break it down into three voices. Let's keep it simple. We have the signal. So that is that voice, that knowing, that trust, that this is the thing that I want to do. We have our conditioning, which is the patterns and the programs that have been running for so long, since our childhood. And we have the fear, that thing of like, well, these are all the things that can go wrong and might go wrong and probably will go wrong. And so I'm going to deliver them to you here. And the real turning point for me was not just understanding that all three were there. It was, which one am I giving my authority to? Which one of those is ultimately the one that I'm going to go, okay. Now, I remember a long time ago, I was sitting in a workshop. It was quite early on in my journey, and we were setting our intentions, and I remember she went round and asked everybody, what is it that you're intending? And I think it must have been like a new cycle or a new year or something. So it wasn't just the intention for the night, it was the intention, for the rest of our lives, or at least for the moment. And I remember sitting there, and I think the words came in and I thought they sound fancy. And I said, I am going to live a soul-led life. And I remember saying it, thinking, yeah, that sounds great. And not really realizing the implications of that and what that meant. Now, that was probably coming up to 10 years ago now. And I have to say, it wasn't a case of, well, I'm going to set that intention and that came up from now on. But what that began to develop in me was this relationship with my soul. The first of all, the inquiry of where would my soul lead me today? What would my soul have me do? And asking that question over and over again. And then really getting into the habit of listening to, well, what is my fear now saying about this? That when the fear voice came up, that feeling in my stomach, that's the thing that is often very visceral and very real, and just saying to it, okay, like what are we scared of? Like, let's get this out there. And then inviting the soul to come in and witness it, and then noticing, like, this is what I did. You can imagine this almost like this inner boardroom going on, and I would invite my fear to speak to my soul, and my soul would be like, oh, it's cool, we've got this. My soul would be like, oh, it's cool, like, this fear bit, this often, younger version or not as equipped version of me, like, you don't need to do this bit, we've got this, don't worry. And noticing what the soul did to the fears that were coming up, how it reacted. And then doing the same for my conditioning. Oh, but that could never happen to me. Who am I to do this? But whenever this has happened before, blah, blah, blah. Or when I've tried this, oh, yeah, I've done that, been there, done that, bought the t-shirt, nothing's changed. Again, bringing that into the boardroom and asking the soul to witness it. And what began to change was not necessarily how loud each of the voices spoke or each of the parts of me responded, but more so the authority that I gave them. So more so the credence that I would say, okay, like, my fear is important, but you're not in charge of me in this situation. Okay, my conditioning is important, and there's another voice here that has more information than you do. And I began to subtly at first understand that my fear wasn't my enemy, and that my conditionings weren't really my enemy, because my conditionings had got me here. My strategies had kept me alive. They'd kept me safe. They'd led me to knowing more than I could really have ever dreamed of in those moments. But knowing, I think this is what the soul did, is it helped me realize that there is so much more than what's already happened, that there's so much more that we're becoming, that none of that was wasted, and that we are moving into something more. I think before then, and certainly from so many of the teachings that I had, it was banish fear and banish your ego, and all of these quite battleish language around my inner world, that did it not make sense that then my inner world got scared and so spoke louder. This approach seemed to be more integrative. This approach seemed to be more, I'm connecting in with all of me. I'm understanding more about who I am and what wants to be said, and then making the choice. Because the truth is this, I could have at any point followed the voice of my fear, and like, it wouldn't have been terrible. It would have just kept me safe. I could have at any point followed the voice of my conditioning. And I will say this, I probably did many times. again, this isn't a case of, well, now I know better, I'm going to do better, because sometimes we know better and then it takes 1,000 attempts for us to actually like trust it and do better. But this is the point, that day when I said I'm going to live a soul-led life and I began to develop this relationship with my soul, I began to realize something really important, that my soul was never going to lead me wrong. My soul might lead me into more of my fears. My soul might take me to some really uncomfortable horizons. My soul might stretch me, it will stretch me into more than I ever thought was possible. And that certainly isn't easy. But the more I practiced this, the more I got curious with it, the more I was like, well, let's just see what happens. The more I realized, looking back in hindsight, yes, it might have taken me through some uncomfortable situations. Yeah, it might have taken me on some seeming detours, but look who I met because of that. Look what I learned because of that. Look what I achieved because of that. Look what I experienced because of that. And it was that trust that really began to change how I would respond and which part of me I was saying yes to. And so this thing of understanding the difference is the first step, because we can't get there if we haven't got here first. We can't know whether or not it's our fear, our conditioning, or our soul speaking to us if we don't begin to understand the difference. But then the next step of that is, I'm going to listen to you all, which, by the way, does two things. One, it gives you this really great relationship. It really helps you understand, well, fear comes from here, conditioning comes from here, soul comes from here. You begin to feel the different qualities of it. But also, it gives you that separation that none of these are in charge of me. None of these are true. None of these opinions, which is what they are actually me. And so now I have a choice. Now I choose, which one am I going to listen to? Or maybe we bring in another aspect of, well, how do I satisfy this while still following this? I don't feel safe enough. My nervous system is wired for this or not wired for this. What do I now need to do? How do I bring this together? And that, I think, is what changes everything. This willingness to hear these three voices, this openness to, actually, I have a choice here, that I don't just have to be run by my subconscious programmings. I don't just have to be run by what I thought was possible when I was under 7, but actually changing the percentage of how much authority I'm giving into those different aspects of me. And I wonder if next time you just think about, well, what does my intuition say? Or how did I get here? Rather than going down the default route, which is, well, I have an intuition problem. I do not know what my intuition is. I hear this so many times. Like, what if we just said, oh, I have an authority problem? I have an issue with what I am giving my authority to. It's a pattern interrupt. It can really help us to take stock of where we are in the moment and go, okay, I see I see it clearly now. I'm pandering to my fears. I'm pandering to my conditioning. I'm pandering to the version of me from 1 year, 5 year, 20 years ago. And now what do I want to do? And maybe it's that. Maybe you want to carry on doing that. And that's fine, if that's fine. Or maybe just for today, you want to give a little bit more authority to your soul. And I wonder, dear listener, when you do that, where your soul will take you to. I will see you on the next episode of the Mystic in Training podcast. Bye for now.